Welcome back, everybody. We're going to make the church block in this episode. It's main block 12. So we always start by putting our USB stick into the machine with the machine turned off. Then we turn the machine on and wait for it to wake up and get itself ready to go. Okay? Once it's turned on, you might get a notification that the arm is going to move. That's fine. Once everything is ready to go, we hit the file open. We hit our USB stick to tell it to look at the USB stick. Mine opened to where the Juju tree skirt is. You might get a file that says EMB or EMBF. In that case, you hit the up arrow up here until the arrow is grayed out. Okay? Then you find the folder where your tree skirt is, and all of the Juju tree skirt files are here in the DBJJITH North Pole. Stands for Designs by Juju in the Hoop North Pole. Once you've opened that file, you're going to select the size blocks you're going to make. Whoop. I don't know what happened. I'm making the large tree skirt, so I select 8 by 12. If you are doing the medium, it's 6 by 10, and small is 5 by 7. So we select 8 by 12. And we're going to make main block 12. Once this opens, it comes up with icons of the blocks themselves, and it can be very hard to tell which one is which. If you click on this button here at the top, it gives you a better description. Main block 1, main block 10, main block 11. We're going to find 12, which is right here, and it's the church.
How did you find 12?
Hold on, it's gotta go. It said main block 12 in the description.
No, you used the arrows at the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry. You go to the 8 by 12 files, main blocks. I clicked on that. That gives you the longer description. Down here it shows you there's 5 pages of designs. You use the arrows to scroll through until you find the block you're looking for down here, and then you click on it. I don't need to be in this screen anymore, and mine's already open, so I'm going to hit X. The other, first thing I do, and I jumped through it before, is check your hoop. This one says we're in hoop 28B. Hoop 28B does not come with any, it's an additional purchase, so what you need to do is change your hoop size. We're going to go to the home and to the grid screen, and here we can change the hoop. Underneath the picture there's a picture of the hoop. 550 users need to select RE36B. Okay, and then we've got to go to the Ready to Sew screen, so we hit OK here. Now it says RE36B. I showed you in the last video, I'll show you again. The hoop, you can't see it probably on the screen, but on the piece that attaches to the arm of your embroidery machine, it'll tell you the name of the hoop. This one's 36B. So I'm going to have it here ready to go. So I click OK on the screen, and now we are to what should look a little familiar to you if you watched the last video. Down here we're going to see what step are we on, and we're on step 1. So we're ready to, I've got my stabilizer hooped, which I showed you how to do in the video for inner block 1. So that's hooped. I've got a white bobbin in my bobbin case. I'm going to go ahead and attach my hoop. Again, 550 and 500 users, you need to attach your extra large workspace table. I'm going to check my stitch chart, and the first thing it's going to do for the first 9 stitch outs, we're going to use white thread. As we discovered in the last video, you can't see white thread on the stabilizer, so I'm actually going to stitch out with a light gray so you guys can see what's happening. You should use color 10, which is white. We're going to go through a series of placement and tack down stitches. The placement stitches show you where to put your fabric or your batting. The tack down stitches sew your fabric or your batting down. So the first thing we're going to do is the batting placement line. Again, These are going to be long basting stitches. So we're going to pull a long piece of thread out and lay it on our stabilizer, and we're not going to touch it. Press your foot down and hit your start button, and let this stitch quite a ways before you pause it. Once you know you're getting good stitches, you're going to clip your threads. Again, if these stitches start to pull out, it's hard for your machine to stitch on stabilizer only. Just pull out long threads and let them sit. Once you get to the end, that's your placement line. You're going to grab your piece of batting, whatever the batting size was you cut for your main blocks. You're going to take a piece of batting and you're going to lay it so it completely covers your placement stitch. As long as that stitch is completely covered, everything is okay. So that's all covered, and now it's going to do a double line of stitching to hold your batting down. And again, you have white thread, I have gray, so you can see. Once we know we've got good stitching, we're going to stop and clip our thread. And then we're going to let it stitch the tack down line. If you have trouble with your batting bubbling up, you can tape things down. You can anchor it with Scotch tape, washi tape, masking tape, or Kimberbell paper tape. And now you're going to press your foot, and you're going to take your hoop off, at least back a little bit, and you need to cut your batting outside of the placement line. Again, I use these duckbill scissors. I put the duckbill part underneath the batting. That means you have to turn it usually. Just as close as you can to the placement line, but don't cut through the placement line. It's very helpful to have a small garbage can close by. Not this guy to get under. I have to turn it. Okay. It's okay if the edge is fuzzy, it's going to get trapped under your fabric. But once you've got a nice, neat piece of batting, you're going to reattach your hoop. And here you can check, and it says main fabric tack down. So that means you take your main fabric, your big piece of background fabric, and you're going to lay it completely covering your batting. And you're going to, it's going to basically do the same stitch it just did over again to tack down your main fabric. Okay, once this is done, our next step is the church placement line. I am going to switch at this point to white thread because you guys will be able to see the white thread on this background fabric, and also none of these stitches will technically show in your final product, but they get stitched over with decorative stitching later on, but the gray, there's a chance it could shadow through the lighter colors. So I'm just going to switch to white, and then we're going to stitch a placement line for the church building. So we're going to start, Janome machines always want you to raise and lower your presser foot so that the machine knows you know it was a color change. And again, we're going to stop after a few stitches and clip our thread so it doesn't get sewn in and messy. And now what we are going to do is in the hoop applique. So the first thing we're going to do is now we're going to put our church tack down. So what that means is you take your church fabric, which is the green glittery, dark green glittery fabric, and you make sure that it covers the placement line you just stitched completely. If you can see the outline of the church. So we're going to take our fabric and completely cover it. You can get some tape, and you could put some tape all around it if you wanted to. The bigger pieces of fabric we usually find don't move. But if you have trouble, don't hesitate to grab some tape and just tape it down outside of where the stitching is. Okay, we're going to start it up. And because this is a tack down, it's going to do the double line of stitching over it to anchor it in place. And it'll pretty much stitch exactly where it just stitched. Okay. Now I'm going to take my hoop off, and I have to stand up to do this. We've got to cut the fabric away outside of the placement line. And what's going to happen later on is it's going to put a decorative satin stitch over this placement line. And if you have fabric sticking out too far, it doesn't completely cover, and it looks kind of messy, and it'll have little fuzzies sticking out. So you want to find a pair of scissors or snips. A lot of people use the duckbill ones. I prefer to use snips because I can get closer to my stitching lines. And what we have to do is snip as close as we can to the stitching lines without snipping through them.
Or the fabric underneath.
Or the fabric underneath, yes, good point. So most of your embroidery snips are curved. You can see they're curved up to help prevent that. Don't forget you have high lift on your machines to help you get your hoop out, because we have to snip all the way around. And you want to take the time to spin the hoop so that you're at a good angle for you. People who are making smaller tree skirts than the large, you are still going to have the same size fabric pieces for your applique as the large. It was just a cost-effective decision for us. You are welcome to trim your fabric pieces down if you want, or just lay them on there and trim away more fabric. Okay, next on our list, you can, if you forgot where you are, you can check your screen and you can see we are on step 6. Okay, then you can look at your list and see 6 is your roof placement line. So we're going to put it back on and it's going to stitch, actually I'm going to think it's going to stitch 3 spots because there's 3 different sections of roof. There's the first one. Now it's going to do 2 on the sides, I think. And generally I don't trim those tiny threads. Most of the time they get sucked into the stitching. If they don't, you can stop and cut them. Okay, now this one, where'd my snips go? Thread, I'm going to trim that off. And now you should have a piece of fabric. This is your roof fabric. It should be big enough to cover all 3 areas of roof that were just stitched. Don't leave your embroidery machine alone when it's doing stuff like this. You want to stick around and make sure that you positioned it correctly. Now we're going to trim that fabric away. Again, make sure you're not cutting through the stuff that's underneath. You can see your church is starting to appear. And now we are on step 8, which is the tree placement lines. Yep, step 8. And according to our list, tree placement. So,
Still white thread.
still white thread. Nothing exciting yet. And for this, after this, you'll have 2 pieces of tree fabric. They will know which fabric is which because they're going to get a picture of each box. Now we're going to do our tree tack down lines. So put a piece of fabric there and a piece of fabric here. And actually I'm going to put the tape away. I'll be right back. I'm going to grab some tape. And the reason I'm taping these is for 2 reasons. One, I want to show you how to do it. And the other is when the machine moves from one piece of fabric onto another piece of fabric, it tends to, the foot wants to push the second piece of fabric up. So we're going to tape that one down so that doesn't happen. And what I did was I taped outside. Here's my placement lines. I taped way outside of the placement lines so your machine doesn't sew through the tape. If it sewed through the tape, it will sew through the tape, but it also makes your needles sticky. So we don't want that to happen. Right here, and I've got my finger on the stop button. If it had pushed my fabric up, it would have done it like this. So when the machine is moving, I put my finger on the stop button. In case it does push that fabric up, I want to stop it right away so that I can fix it before it starts stitching and stitches it down, and then I have to rip it. Can rip with embroidery, but you also run the risk of pulling your project out of it. That's just me. Okay, we're gonna trim the tree fabric.
Okay.
Yeah, it's as good as it gets around here. And then we're going to change our thread color. You really want to take your time and get as close as you can. With your snipping. Which is kind of hard to do, but a little bit easier with the snips because they have such a pointy end.
Those snips are pretty and fun.
Aren't they fun? We have them here. We gotta do the other tree. It is easier to take this completely off the machine and set it on a flat surface, but we're trying to make videos, so. Okay, after this, Juju is really good about doing all of your applique stuff first, and then it moves on to all of the decorative, more embroidery type stitching. So now what we're going to do is go through a series of stitches that will add all the little decorative details to your church, and will also finish the edges of all the buildings. So we are on step 10, which is the cross. Step 10 here. Step 10 on our steps says we're going to stitch out the cross. We're going to use exquisite color 642, which is called zinnia gold. And here is, you can tell it's 642 from this, okay? And it's a pretty gold color. If anyone is not using exquisite colors and they are using other just thread they have at home, when you're thinking about these stitches, you want to think about this gold gets placed on top of dark green fabric. So you want to think about, is it going to cover, will the color you chose cover your background fabric well? Is it going to oh, this is going to do the tiny cross at the top. I was thinking it was going to do the cross in the stained glass window. But you always want to think about how your thread looks against your background fabric, against your other stitches. And with embroidery, you also want to think about, does it actually look like the thing you're trying to make? Now we are going to do windows, the windows in the church, and we are going to use ivory, which is number 1140, which is a pretty ivory color. I always make sure when I am threading my machine that I put my little spool cap in the same place. I always set it there. Otherwise, I'm looking for it all the time.
Do you ever not use a spool cap?
I always use this spool cap with the exquisite thread because of the shape of the spool. If you were using something that was shaped like a Coates and Clark spool of thread, raise and lower your presser foot, then you use the big. Okay guys, I looked at the wrong step. We are actually doing the outline of the church, which is color 695. Okay, so good thing. So now we have to go back. We're just going to go back to the beginning of step 11. So if you need to go between steps here, you can just use these arrows. Make sure your presser foot is up, and then you can go here. That's taking us back to the beginning of step 10, and now we can go back to the beginning of step 11. And the reason we're doing it that way is because it does the tie-off steps. It'll tie a knot at the beginning of the step, so we want to go back to the beginning so we know we have a good clean start. We can just stitch over. It only did like 6 stitches, so we can just go back over them. If this was a satin stitch, we would have to rip it out, but we don't because it's going to go ahead and stop the video and come back when we have outlined the whole church. Okay, so this did something I didn't remember, and it only did the 2 little lines here, and then we had to change colors to do the roof stitching, and then to finish, we changed back to green to finish the church outline. I want to warn you though, when it's satin stitching, it lays some base work. It'll just do some straight stitching and some zigzags first, and it does some traveling stitches. So it stitches this roof like this, and then it travels in your gold thread down and around and back up to do this roof outline over here. Don't get scared, don't stop it, it's what it's supposed to do, and you can see the green thread completely covers the traveling stitches, okay? So we are now going to do step 14, and step 14 is windows, and it's going to do these are called fill stitches, and what that means is it's just, the windows on this are completely made of thread, and it's going to make an outline and then fill it in. So it's going to make 2 windows, I think, unless it does, I don't remember if it does the stained glass center window now or not. But you can see the way it always works is it lays some groundwork stitches so that your decorative stitches actually stand up and stand out from your background. Juju also has her own color charts that I altered, and it'll actually show you more detail of what it's going to do. So it's actually, it is going to do the center one, and you don't have to be surprised. You can print these out if you want to, and it tells you step 14, and it shows you what it's going to stitch out. If you don't like a color choice we made, that's fine. You are welcome to change it. And the Juju color charts are going to give you more detail about what all will be stitched out. And I see a thread sticking there, and this looks like a piece of fabric, but okay. So we're going to go ahead and let this finish, and we will come back for the next color. Okay, our windows are done, and now we are moving on to the next step. Is it's going to outline the roof of this little bit of the roof of the church, and it's going to outline all of these windows in this gold color. So I'm going to go ahead and start it up, and I'm going to wait a little bit till I know it's stitching well, and then I clip this thread. And the reasons we clip the threads, it's really important with embroidery to be neat as you go. If you don't, what ends up happening is that long piece of thread gets tangled up. You never know where it's going to get tangled up or when, so you don't know if it's going to get tangled up in this stitching or other stitching. And the other thing that can happen is it can get tangled around your foot. And if it gets tangled around your foot, all kinds of terrible things happen, including it messes the tension up really bad. It can pull your project out of your hoop. It can mess up the tension on your machine. It can do all kinds of different things. You can see right now it laid all kinds of zigzag stitches, and now it's doing satin stitches. And satin stitches are those stitches that go back and forth, and they're usually kind of raised. And one of the reasons they're raised is because it laid all of those zigzag stitches to help the stitches stay hooked up. Once it does this, it's going to go do satin stitches around the outline of the windows. And what you'll see is most of the time we don't have to trim the threads when it jumps. And jumping means it moves from one area of your project to another area of your project. So when it jumps, it cuts the thread the appropriate length so that when it starts stitching again, it just sucks the end of the thread into your stitching. What I am going to do is when it jumps, I'm going to stop it. An interesting feature on the Janome machines is anytime during the jump you can hit your stop button and it will move to its next start point, and then it'll just pause. So it's going to tie off the threads here and clip them. And then while it's jumping, I'm going to press the stop button. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I saw these tiny stitches sticking out, these little white ones, and I want to get them up. I want to get them out of there. Okay? Because those can get trapped and we don't want them to. So now I just hit start. What you saw was when it came, the machine moved over here. When the machine finished the roof, it came over here and then down. It does that to get the threads that it leaves behind out of the way. So when it was about here, I hit the stop button, and then it stopped once it got to where it was to start again. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn the video off, and I'm going to stitch out all the steps on the stained glass window. Actually, I'm probably just going to go ahead and finish the block, and then we will come back at the end and I'll let you know if anything interesting happened and you can see what the block looks like. But for you guys, you're just going to follow our thread chart. Okay, we're just going to follow the steps, and again, you're just going to change it to whatever red color it says here and stitch out that step, okay? All right, we'll see you back in a little bit. Okay, our block is finished, and this is what it looks like. There was one little thing that happened along the way.
Wait a minute, Megan, what is going on here?
You put your finger in front of the... Okay, so the block is done, and there was one thing I wanted to point out to you, and that was when we do black, when we use black thread, you want to switch to a black bobbin. You're going to use a white bobbin for everything in here except in your black, when you put the black thread in, and then you want to put in a black bobbin. It does say that in the details section of my thread chart to you, only I can't show it to you on my thread chart because I have to go change it so it says that. So now once it's all out and everything is stitched out, you want to clean up, and the way you clean up is you get a pair of tweezers and you grab these little tiny threads that are sticking out and you take your snips, whoops, and you just clip as close as you can to your project. You want to put your tweezers in your non-dominant hand and your snips in your dominant hand because you need you need as much control over your snips as possible. Okay? So once it is all cleaned up, then you are going...
How about on that cross?
What about the
there's
cross?
A jump stitch. From the red to the... Isn't that a jump stitch?
Oh, here. Yep, there is a little jump stitch. So you want to take your tweezers and you want to make sure it's all pulled up, and then you're going to grab it and clip. And the thread is shredded a little bit, so you might have to clip more than once. But yeah, if there's jump stitches, which is when the machine moves from one section of stitching to another, so it stopped stitching here and went to stitch here, or vice versa, sometimes you'll get threads that get trapped, and you just want to pull those out and trim them up. Okay? Once your block is all cleaned up, and it's much easier to clean it in the hoop than out of it, then you are going to take it out of the hoop, and you are going to leave it attached to the stabilizer until you have watched the video, the main video this month that was meant for everyone. It's going to show you how to trim these up and sew them together. Okay? All right. Good luck. Let us know if you have any questions.